I graduated from Teachers University when I was, the first one, I got my bachelor there when I was 20, 21. And then I started teaching as a primary school teacher in the Netherlands. I'm from the Netherlands. At the same time, I started my second master's in order to make sure that I became a PE teacher as well. I wanted to be a PE teacher as well. So I became a primary homeroom teacher and a secondary PE teacher. So those two things I graduated from, those two universities I graduated from. And then I started teaching full time. First in a primary school, then in a juvenile prison, as in a prison for young boys who were who stepped out of line, who were punished and put in prison. And I taught those students. In my country, those kids have lessons, have a school. I worked in that prison for about 3 years, working with those students in PE and teaching some of the students that were falling behind at primary level for math and for our languages. After that, I went to an institution for the same boys in prison, but they were mentally unstable boys. So they were boys that were put away once because they committed a crime, and two because they were mentally ill, so to speak. So I worked with those students as well for a while. And then I became a teacher lector, as in I taught the students who wanted to be a teacher how to teach, become a primary school teacher. So I taught students how to become a primary school teacher at the university. And after that, my family and I left for abroad to leave the country and went to Egypt. 2 years before the revolution in Egypt and 2 years after the revolution we left again. So we were there for 4 years. During the Arab Spring, as they call the revolution in Egypt, that's when we were there. And then we went to Kenya and lived there for 4 years. And then we came here in 2017. So in 2013 we must have gone to Kenya. And 2009 I'm sure we went to Egypt for my first headship as a primary principal, initially in both Egypt and in Kenya. Yeah. When I taught at university, this were students that were aged 18 to 21. In prison, I was working with the students aged 12 to 19. And in Egypt, I worked with primary school teachers, students rather. And in Kenya, that was also mostly primary, yes. I started here in Bangladesh as a primary school, first assistant principal or deputy principal, and then I became the primary school principal, and now I'm the director of the International School Dhaka. Yeah. So teaching in Bangladesh in our school means teaching with an international curriculum. It means that it's not just, and I always say 6 and 6 is always 12. Whatever curriculum you follow, some of the outcomes are set the way they are because it's very simple, it's math. Math can be very difficult, but there's always a right or a wrong answer. International teaching teaches the same kind of content, however we use a different kind of approach. I was brought up in an approach that is the Dutch national educational system. A strong system, a solid system that really works in collaborating with other students, with your friends, with your peers in the classroom. Teaching abroad, teaching internationally, and leading internationally has really, the focus really is on collaborating, on working together, and making sure that the students know so much more than just 6 and 6 equals 12. Because everyone around the world will know that 6 and 6 will always equal 12. But the crux of the matter is the most important thing for our students to learn nowadays, I think, is making sure that they know who they are, know what they can contribute to a company, to a group of people that work together, knowing your strengths, feeling empowered to use those strengths when you are working, and feeling passionate about what you're doing, and passionate about who you are and what you can bring to the table. Also, with a very strong academic content, we are an IB school. It's one of the most rigorous systems out there where you can have your exam in, as in when you can graduate from. Many universities accept that exam paper, that diploma, as an enrollment for their universities. So it's really rigorous, it's really academically driven. But at the same time, the underlayer really is about working together, inspiring and being inspired by our teachers and by our peers, by our group. And that really brings something else to the table. If I see our students on stage, even my daughter's in school, 5-year-old, on stage, performing, feeling confident on that stage in front of 400 people in our beautiful auditorium, I recognize this is why I want you in this school. Because I need you to be confident, feel supported, feel valued in what you do. Not just academically, but also everything beyond academically. So what I recognized, both in the Netherlands and in Egypt and in Kenya and in Bangladesh, I recognized the same thing. If we give the students a great curriculum, a great approach to learning, any student around the world is eager to learn that way, is eager to take that on board and become that person that we would like that person to become. They become themselves, and we want to guide them to become themselves. Whether in Kenya, or in Egypt, or in the Netherlands, or in Bangladesh, all the kids really, once you challenge them, not just academically, but on top of the academics, also from different layers, from different foci, if you will, that really supports the students in their growth towards their life after school. You are confident when you graduate from our school. You are confident both academically and personally that you matter, that you are indeed heard and seen and are ready to conquer the world. Both in our country, Bangladesh, and in all the countries I've worked at using such an international system. I think it's a very good question to ask and to compare Bangladeshi public education or government-run education to other, let's say, developing countries around the world. In Africa, where I worked and lived, as in Egypt and in Kenya, or anywhere else around the world in a developing country. I think the question is very valid. What I recognized in those other countries and in our country in Bangladesh is that the training, the education of the teachers is key. If we prepare our teachers in a way that is just there to focus on making the exam, passing a test, we're not reaching the students. We're trying to get the students to remember something. Remember something for next Tuesday when we have the test. And they can forget all about it again on Wednesday. Because the test was made yesterday, we don't care about the results anymore. You've passed your test, you've ticked that box, and now you are done. That philosophy goes a long way because it really provides, and many students do remember what they were learning in the test. However, I do also think in many countries the focus is from many of the teachers who themselves were raised in that form of education, that is the way forward. I think it is absolutely true that this brings our students up at a higher level. They'll learn about math. They will learn about English. They're ready to grow from wherever they want to grow. The growth as a nation, however, in any developing country, I think, comes from the amount of time, energy, financial support that teachers would get in being trained in being a 2022 teacher. Not the teacher that they had themselves when they were in school, let's say in 1984, whenever. When a teacher went to school who's now at an age to teach, he might do the same thing that he was taught, or the same way he was taught in 1980s. But the world has moved on. We know so much more about the brain and how the neurons work and how they connect. We know all this. But it's not yet reached the level of governmental education in many countries. Why? Because the focus is not on education. And as an educator, I would say the government should have a focus on education because that's the future. The future is not the senators or the MPs or the people in power now. They're incredibly important for now, but the next generation of people their educational level needs to be lifted. And the start is the teachers that need to be educated in a more 2022 kind of way. The thing is, I visited a few schools in Bangladesh over the years, primary schools, and secondary schools as well, as in schools that were, and walking into classrooms, being into classrooms. I see what I just described, Bangla medium school, more in the countryside than in Dhaka, visiting the beautiful country of Bangladesh because we couldn't go out because of COVID. We didn't leave Bangladesh for quite a while, so we traveled within the country. We always try to visit a school when we travel through Bangladesh because we're an educational kind of family. I do know that ISD is a school for people that can afford it. I do also know that there's not many people that can afford our kind of school. The thing is, the reason for that is, of course, our teachers come from all over the world. So I think, yeah, somewhere around 30 countries are represented in our teacher, not our students, but our teacher body. So the teachers in our school come from 29 different countries. We go out of our way not to have teachers from one country, only Dutch teachers, only teachers from the Netherlands. It would mean we are the Netherlands school. Well, that's not the same. We are an international school. We need people from South America, North America, Africa, Australasia, and Asia, Europe, in order to make sure that we are mixed. That is what makes a school like ours more expensive, because those people are flown in, live here, work here, and get paid the salaries that they would get paid in their home countries as well, roughly. And that makes it more expensive. Is it better?
No.
I'm not saying it's better. It's different. I think if we would rate the Bangladeshi public educational system, it is in line with what a developing country is. Again, we need to make sure, I think we need to make sure that the government supports education as a priority in their, in whatever they have in their budgets, whatever they have in their future plans, in their plans for the future. Education should always be a key factor in that. If we don't do that now, the rating of the Bangladeshi public educational system will not go up the way we want it to go up. We hear that the economy is on the rise. We hear that the economy in Bangladesh is doing well, globally. That's great news. The benefits from that global growth and from an economical perspective should really reach our students in our schools. Because only if we educate them better will the continued growth of the economic system continue. I think. Is it then now very low? Is our educational system very low on an international scale of educational systems? It's not high. And that is something because I think the priority has not been on education for a long time. I know there's incredibly positive initiatives, individual schools, individual districts working really hard to make sure that those students there are supported in a better way, educated in a better way. Again, if we want our students to grow, we have to start with our teachers and with the facilities and with those teachers, there's education of those teachers. So the best universities should not just have engineering or should not just have a law, but the best universities should really also focus on great teachers, making sure that teachers are educated in order to support those students in the schools around the nation. If you ask about just primary level and in trying to increase the level of math or English, if a teacher only has the minimum amount of resources, how can we expect that teacher to create something beautiful in the classroom when the resources he or she gets are minimum, just broccoli and rice? And the education that the teacher himself or herself has had is not preparing him to create excellence. It's only preparing him to go through the motions of what we already have, a status quo. If you want to break a status quo, if you want to have a new kind of focus on education, what needs to happen? Again, back to the chef. He needs to have all the ingredients necessary. He needs to have a proper stove to make such a beautiful dinner. A teacher should have resources. A teacher should have a good education as a teacher himself to know, or herself, to know how and what he or she is supposed to be teaching. I feel a school like ours is also obligated to train people up internally. All our teaching assistants, for example, expats, the foreigners, are teachers that are brought in from different countries. Every class has 2 teachers. One teacher from abroad and one teaching assistant from Bangladesh. And those people are trained in our way of working, our way of thinking. I'm so grateful for them. And the reason I'm sharing this is that I see that there are excellent teachers in Bangladesh, that there are great teachers in Bangladesh. Not less perfect or not less great than any expat teacher is. There's a lot of potential in our teachers in Bangladesh. But they need the training and they need the resources. What does that need? It needs money in order to create such training and to have those resources in any school around the nation. Running a business, running a school, running a country, balancing budgets is always very difficult. The priority of any country is, of course, the people need to have a safe, a healthy, have food, have a home. So there's a lot of priorities on the government's list, and there should be. And one of those priorities should be, and very likely is, education. Is it more important than food on the table? Education is? Well, we can debate that. Is it more important than having, I don't know, more houses? I don't know. You have to, the government has to make a choice. They can't make new money. That's not how it works. So, and what I was saying is, if the economy is on the rise, yes, and it is on the rise, where is the money that is pumped into the economy? Is that reaching the important focuses that we have in the country? Healthcare, educational care, where is that going? If we maintain a status quo of the level of education, there's no growth. And if there's no growth in the future of our nation, if there's no growth in the education in our nation, we're not smart about investing in the future. But they have so many things to juggle, so many balls to juggle. The environment, there's so many things that need to be on their agenda that it's difficult to say the 2% should go to 5%, the 5% should go to 10%. I don't know, but it needs to be a continued focus. I think anyone would agree that investing in the future is important in any country. But you can only spend every taka once. So if you have 10 taka, you want to divide it over 11 different things, one of them doesn't get a taka. So you have to make sure that you make those decisions where the money is going to, based on the priority that the government at this stage has. I don't disagree with what's currently happening, but if we want to grow, it needs an investment. I think any school around the world was influenced by COVID, including our school and including all the schools in Bangladesh. The closure that we had, the school closure that we had, was very long. For a very long period of time, none of the students were allowed to come to school. Exactly, just under 2 years, I think. 20 months or so, 19 months. Good. What does that mean for those 19 or 20 months or 2 years? Our students were still in school, online school. So we continued the program, we continued the curriculum. Is there a gap? Of course there is a gap, because being in school is way more efficient than being online. That's how we recognized being online. It was good as we could get it. We were happy. Many of our parents were very happy with the system that we had. Many of our students were very happy. But still, a normal growth pattern was broken because it was difficult for the students to be at home only behind the screen and to work behind the screen. So the growth was not as good. So we have a gap. I think many schools will have a gap. How do we address it? By making sure that all the students in different grades, first of all, when they came back to school, our focus was academics, but also emotional development. Those students who have been home for such a long time need support. We see that globally, that many students that were at home for such a long period of time suffered, not just academically, but also from the perspective of being with friends, being in a group, socializing, being together with your friends in school. Imagine our school starts at the age of 2. Those students don't know the world without COVID. They don't know the adults without the mask. That's what their life has all been about since the age of, as in if you're now 2 years old, that is all you know. People with masks on. Those students need to be educated, those students need to be taken by the hand and supported. The development of it looks, the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise a child means there's so many influence coming towards a child, helping a child, supporting a child, that the relationship between home and school is key. The partnership that they have is key. We can only raise a child well if we do that together. At home you have different rules, you have different regulations. At school we have different rules and regulations and expectations. If we work well together, the child will flourish, whichever school they are. ISD as a school is a great example. We have a lot of connections with the parents and with ourselves. The community is part of the school. They come to school for events, they're invited to come to school and celebrate the learning of their children. We want them to come to school. And I hope that any other school in Bangladesh would have, at their level, at the same level that we have, at whatever kind of way, bringing the school into the homes, not just with homework, but also bringing home into school, inviting them and showing the learning that goes on in class for parents to understand what the expectations are at school. If we can educate parents about the expectations that we have of their children, they have a bigger understanding. They will know what is expected of their children, and that will help them to raise their own kids as well. Because a parent is always a different generation than the student is. And that generation gap is very important for parents to understand as well.